ChatGPT is being used to try and break into our computers. We're seeing more and more hacking going on and spear phishing. It's going to go like crazy. We'll talk a little bit about what those are, but we're going to talk about the solution right now. Well, the big problem that we have when it comes to cybersecurity and privacy nowadays really boils down to pretty much one thing. The bad guys have all of our information. They were stolen from people that we trusted. Look at the massive list of all of these hacks, including big companies, right? We're talking about companies that have information on pretty much every American, every European out there. These credit rating companies that had everything stolen from them. How many people went to prison over that? How many people really faced any serious consequences? Did the companies even face any serious consequences? You know, we are not their customers. We are their product. And their customers didn't really do much about them. You know, the banks and the credit card companies, all of these other companies that use the information that they gather, that they use to judge us and our credit worthiness. Heck, nowadays, even your insurance rates are determined partially by your credit rating from these companies. And their data was stolen from them. It was stolen. There's no excuse for that. The only thing I can think of is they're sitting around a boardroom table saying, well, let's see here. If we pull up our socks here on cybersecurity, we're going to have to rewrite some of this code so that the data is encrypted at rest. And we're going to have to clean up the way we transfer the data in our backups of the data. And we're going to have to also watch the links, maybe rewrite some of the code that is being used for what are effectively programming interfaces, right, with their customers, their real customers, not you and me. They don't care about us. We're a product, but the real customers. So that's going to cost us what, Charlie? Oh, about 25 million, 50 million, 100 million. Okay. And if all of our data is stolen, if every American loses everything to the bad guys, their social security numbers, their home addresses, the homes they own, information about the cars they own, where they work, how much they make, the phone numbers, their email addresses, their passwords. What's that going to cost us, Charlie? Oh, I don't know. Probably get a fine, maybe $10 million. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to pay some reparations. Okay, so let's say that it's an incredibly high number, an impossible number. Let's say it's $500 million, and we know that number that you gave us about, Charlie, you know, the upgrades on all of our systems. You know, that's really lowballing it. Everything takes about 3 times longer and costs about 3 times as much. So let me see here, a little bit more mental math. What's going on? Okay, so what's happening? Yeah, okay. So in other words, it's going to be 3 times cheaper for us to not do anything and to have all of the information of all of the Americans and Europeans in the hands of cyber criminals, including nation states like China and Russia. It's going to be cheaper to just let them steal all of that data, and then, you know, we'll pay the piper at the end of the dance, and then the life will go on. You know, we'll probably have to clean up then, but you know, that's tomorrow's problem. We don't want to hurt our profits here this quarter by spending this money. That, to me, that just seems like the conversation that business after business had. Now, the conversations that you and I might have about cybersecurity are far, far, far different, right? The first thing is awareness about patching. Do you really follow all of this stuff? There are thousands of patches that are released every month for all kinds of software and hardware systems. Thousands of them. And awareness, which are the patches that you need to apply? Which ones are actually being exploited? Okay, so the good guys came up with this CVE system you might have heard of, and what it does is it says, okay, this particular patch we're going to give a score from 0 to 10, and, well, it's rarely ever 0. And 10 just means, it's easy to exploit, and, we've got everything below that. Okay, that's all well and good. But I want you to look at one of the big companies out there that almost every one of us deals with. Its initials, I'm not going to tell you its name, but its initials are Microsoft. And Microsoft is out there making software, right? They've got some brilliant people working there. I got to tell you, I know a few of these guys, and they really are smart people. But it's a matter of prioritization. Where are they putting it, right? Microsoft is all into features, less about functionality. You might remember that Microsoft Word was terrible until you got to, version 6? And that seemed to be true of pretty much every Microsoft product out there. It was all about checkboxes. Yeah, it's got this feature, it's got that feature, it's got this feature. Now, Microsoft Dynamics, all of the pain that was for so many years and so many different things, right, from Microsoft. So Microsoft was releasing patches almost daily. So what did they do? They decided they'd have Patch Tuesday, right? We're just going to release patches once a month, right? Once a month. And that's going to make everybody's life easier. Okay, so that means that these level 10 CVE vulnerabilities, in other words, the worst vulnerabilities of the worst, also known as zero-day vulnerabilities, we're going to make sure that the average person is exposed to those in business for 2 weeks, right? What's the average if it's once a month? 30 days, 15 divided by 2 is 15 days, right? Give or take. So yeah, we'd rather people not realize that we've got terrible software with major security holes in it, and we're releasing patches when necessary, and we'll just do them all on one Tuesday a month, right? That'll solve the problem. Does that really solve the problem? Obviously not, right? And so Microsoft more recently has gotten to the point where they're saying, okay, well, if it's like super duper, absolutely party pooper, it's a CVE 10 and it's being actively exploited, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, we might issue a patch here other than on Patch Tuesday. Yeah, I think that's what we'll do every once in a while. Do you see the problem? Right? So you as a small business owner or you as a home user, how do you know which ones to apply? How do you get the priority of it? Do you even have the resources to continually apply patches? Now, a couple of companies have some software, such as Google, for instance, with a Google Chrome browser. Firefox is the same way. They both have mechanisms to automatically apply patches for you. Now, you got to pay attention because the browser will sit there saying, hey, you need to apply patches, you need to apply them. But all you have to do is hit that little relaunch button to apply the patches, and the patches are done. So Microsoft has decided, okay, well, we're going to move away from this model where we charged you constantly for every new version of Office, and we're going to go to a subscription model, which is, I think, a pretty good thing. So you're paying per month. You might be paying, $15 to $25 a month per person, and that covers everything. That's your operating system, that's your Office applications, and you pay that so that you're always getting updates, upgrades, the patches, and some of these patches, again, they're not automatically installed, but they do get installed. So awareness, I think, is a huge, huge issue because it isn't just Microsoft software that you're running. Odds are excellent that you are running software from a whole bunch of different vendors. You've probably downloaded free software off of the internet and installed it and are using it. Not necessarily a bad thing, not a good thing, because some of this software might be bad stuff. right? You've heard of malware before, of course. So there's a lot of things that you need to consider when you're looking at your software and your updates. And you want to make sure that you are not vulnerable, at least, as unvulnerable as you can be. So when the bad guys have all of your information, what do you think is going to happen next? And let me tell you, I don't think it's a good thing, because it's already started happening. The bad guys have been sending what are known as phishing emails and phishing texts. And there's special names for all of these, right? There's phishing, which is an email. There's vishing, which is voicemails. There's smishing, which is your SMS, your text messages. And they're sending you messages trying to convince you that they are something not only not harmless, but something that you want to deal with, something you want to open up, right? Because it's a message from your bank saying, oh my gosh, someone's trying to break into your account right now. I need you to call this number. Or someone's trying to break into your account. I love this one. This is a text message. They're trying to break into your account right now. I'm going to send you a 6-digit number. You need to confirm it so that I can confirm it's you. And then we can shut them down. In reality, what's happening is they are sending you a message. Then they try and use your account information at that website, the bank or whomever it might be, credit card company. And then the credit card company is sending you a text message that comes in after the bad guys. And then you give the bad guys that 6-digit confirmation number. Does that sound messed up to you? Well, it's going to get a lot worse, and that's where true two-factor authentication comes into play. That's what we're going to talk about. Text messages are not enough to verify who you are. I just described one of the big problems with text messages, and we're going to talk about a couple of others here. And then what can you do? How can you absolutely protect yourself? I went into this is kind of like ChatGPT, into an API playground for it. And this is the whole thing we've been worried about, right? This is the AI that's out there. And I use this every day. And I'm writing some software, in fact, and it'll be a service. We're going to make it a free service for listeners who are on my email list to get the free email and updates every week. But what I'm trying to do is put together something that lets you know what you should be patching right now. Not one of these lists that uses CVEs, says, oh, it's a level 10. Yeah, you got to do something about it. Because there are how many level 10s a month? I don't know. It's hundreds in some months. It's just crazy. But what ones do you really need to do? So I'm trying to tie in some of the AI stuff into examining things and industry statistics and stuff, which is what AI is really good at, and make that a service. So we're going to have a basic service that's going to be free for you and businesses, as well as individuals. And then we'll have some professional services too that go into a lot more detail, maybe even do the patches for you and stuff. So if you're interested in that, if you want to be involved in the kind of the alpha test of it, let me know. Just email me, me@craigpeterson.com, if you'd like to be a bit of a guinea pig on that, and just to, it's just to help you find out what needs to be patched. And we're talking about really patch awareness here is really what it's all about. So I asked it, the AI, and this is the AI that backs up ChatGPT, and this particular one is called Da Vinci. There are others that are out there, but I said, which cybersecurity breaches were the most harmful to small business and consumers by exposing their personal data to hackers? And this list that it came up with, the top 5, I would agree with, actually. So it did a pretty darn good job here, no question about it. And they vary from 2013 up through 2017. These are the biggest. So here we go. Equifax data breach. That's the one I've been talking about here. This massive data breach exposed the personal data of 147 million consumers and small businesses. It involved the theft of names, social security numbers, birth dates, addresses, and in some cases, driver's license numbers. By the way, I'm going to give you a site that you can go to that's absolutely free in order to find out if your information has been stolen, where it was stolen, and what exactly was stolen. I'll give you that to you. Number 2, Yahoo data breach. This exposed the personal data. I hope you're sitting down. Personal data of 3 billion consumers and small businesses. If you ever had a Yahoo account, okay? It involved the theft of names, email addresses, passwords, dates of birth, and phone numbers. The Target data breach. Target, that wonderful Target store. This breach exposed the personal data of 40 million consumers and small businesses. It involved the theft of credit and debit card numbers, expiration dates, verification codes. Home Depot data breach exposed the personal data of 56 million consumers. Anthem data breach, 79 million consumers. Social security numbers, addresses, birth dates, employment information. What could a bad guy do with that? Huh? What could possibly go wrong, right? I've been saving, and maybe, I was thinking about putting this into my newsletter. You guys have to let me know if you think I should include it, but I've been saving the phishing emails I get every week. And I thought, it might be really kind of cool to send those phishing emails out to everybody. To let you know, just a brief summary along with my weekly tip. But here's a phishing email I got this week, just so you know, if you get something like that it's a problem, right? So they can obviously send you a phishing email, but I want to take us back here to the API. We're going to do this live. I want you to see how fast this is, okay? So we're going to ask it right now. Write a cold email to someone whose account has been compromised, and we want them to confirm their ownership of the account. Okay, so I'm typing this in right now. You can get it for free. ChatGPT is available for free. If you pay $20 a month, it's unlimited use. It's really quite amazing. It's a writing assistant. So it came up with, by the way, while I was talking, a new email. It said, subject, confirm your ownership of your account. Dear name, we hope this email finds you well. We are writing. By the way, I noticed that it seems to be how they start almost all of their emails. So that might be a clue if you get an email. We hope this email finds you well, that it's written by ChatGPT. We are writing to you as we have noticed suspicious activity on your account. In order to protect your security, we need to confirm your ownership of the account. Please respond to this email with your full name, account number, and the last 4 digits of your social security number. This will help us to quickly verify your account and protect your security. We apologize for the inconvenience and appreciate your help in this matter. So what they do is I'm just going to use banks as an example here, but it can be almost anything out there. Your favorite website that sells shoes, or you name it. And so what they'll do is they will make a copy of that website, at least of its homepage. So that website now is got a URL, the bad guy's website, that's pretty close to the real one. So like instead of bankofamerica.com, and I'm just picking on them, okay? No particular reason. This could be any bank. It would be bankoamerica.com, just as an example. And the email they'll send out looks a lot like this one. By the way, did you notice it doesn't have any of the Nigerian characteristics? Remember the Nigerian email scams where they were sending out emails and they were poorly worded, the grammar was all wrong, right? Spelling mistakes. This is worded properly. I just ran it through another AI out there called Grammarly, which if you write anything, you should get Grammarly because it's fantastic and really helps me out too, right? And I've been speaking English for a lot of years. And Grammarly found a couple of things it thought should be expressed slightly differently, but the email is not going to raise anyone's suspicions like some of those old Nigerian scams were. So you've now got access to these people's names, their email addresses. You might know what bank they are at. So you make a mock website of the bank, you send them the email, and maybe you include a link in that email that takes them to your version of the bank's website, you being the bad guy, and then the person clicks on the email, ends up on what looks like the real bank's website, and what does that do now? Well, that real bank's website is going to steal your information because it's going to ask you to log in. And then usually what they'll do is that they'll say login failed and it'll reload the page, but it'll be the real bank page. So now they've got your name, they've got your password, up-to-date name and password, right? And with this type of technology, using these AIs, right, these assistants essentially, they can craft an email specifically for you by just gathering all of the data on you that has been stolen. And that's easy to do. It is really, really easy to do. And then send you a very convincing text message or email message, right? All of that stuff very, very quickly and easily. All right, so we're getting closer here. My email this week, you might have seen it. And the featured tip is Secure Your Digital World, the ultimate guide to two-factor and multi-factor authentication. I promise we're getting closer. We've got enough background information now. Stick around because we'll be right back, and visit me online, craigpeterson.com. We're still covering, have you had your data stolen, where it was stolen. I'm going to tell you right now a website that you can go to find out if your personal information has been stolen, and it'll even monitor it for you for free. There's a guy by the name of Troy Hunt. He's down in Australia, and he started a website some years back, and the name's an interesting one. This has to do initially with gamers, online gamers, and then hackers kind of took it over, and it's the concept of being owned. You know, I own your computer now because I have complete control of it. And then that owned term kind of changed into pwned, which is, you know, I stole it from you, basically. It's now mine. I don't care if it's in your house and you're paying the electric bill. It's mining Bitcoin for me, right? And so he put together a website called Haveibeenpwned.com. Now, it's not P-O-W-N-E-D. It's P-W-N-E-D. Let's see. Have I been P-O-W-N-E-D? What happens if I go to the wrong URL? Okay, good. It sent you the right one. So it's Haveibeenpwned.com. Go there. If you haven't been there, you have to go there, because he has a service that's another part of this whole concept here with having multiple firewalls. It's kind of like a submarine. If one part of the submarine gets damaged, water comes in, you've got hatches in between these other sections, and they are not going to get breached, right? You just want the water in one area of a ship or a submarine, or the same thing with a firewall. So he has done some amazing yeoman's work. He wasn't paid for any of this for the longest time. Now he has a subscription service, and it's being used by 1Password, which is my favorite password manager by far. Nobody else even comes close. It's also being used by the browser guys like Google and others. So it's to be trusted. I've never met Troy Hunt myself. I've read a lot of stuff that he's written, and I've seen him speak and things. But this is the website. So it's Havebeen, B-E-E-N, pwned, P-W-N-E-D.com, or you can spell it P-O-W-N-E-D if you'd like. Go there, and you will see there on his homepage a box that you can punch in your email or your phone number. Now, it says international format. So let me make sure you understand what that is. International format, if you're entering a U.S. number, you would say +1 and then the phone number. Okay, our country code is 1 because, we're the greatest, right? Well, we were first, the whole phone system, in setting up all of the standards. So we are 1. So you need to say +1, your area code, and then your phone number, whatever it might be. And then he will go ahead and look it up in his massive database. So what they've been doing is they being Troy, has been working with companies who had data stolen. And because data had been stolen, and these companies wanted to actually kind of be good about it, right? They went ahead and told Tony, here's all of the people's information that was stolen. Here's what was stolen, because you need to know that. Now, I got to tell you, most businesses, if they are hacked, have no clue what was stolen or what the bad guys did. And usually, by the way, the bad guys are living inside your network for a very, very long time. So he has that, but he also has information that has come from the dark web. And this is one case where I think the government getting involved has been a good thing. The federal government, as they find information about stolen accounts and things online, they've been sending some of that off to Troy. So I think that's fantastic. All here, all trustworthy. So if you put in your phone number here, or if you put in your email address or your password, and we'll talk about that in a second, don't worry about it. You're not giving it to the bad guys. And if you look up in what's called the URL bar, up on the top, near the top of your browser, where it has the address of the site that you're on, you'll see a little lock sign, and it says the connection is secure. If you click on it, you can look at the certificate, and you can see, okay, the certificate is from Cloudflare. They are a company that protects websites, so probably pretty darn legitimate. So I just put in one of my email addresses. This is a throwaway address I've been using for 20, 30 years. And it says, oh no, pwned. All right, so it's telling me that this email address that I've been using for almost 30 years, and it's my own private domain, actually, not almost 30 years, for 30 years, actually 31 now, has been stolen in a data breach. So it's telling me here that it's been pwned in 8 data breaches and found in 1 paste. And let's explain what those are. So the breaches are when bad guys have stolen data. It's been unintentionally exposed to the public. It's been stolen because a bad guy got onto the network, etc., etc. Okay? It's very, very good. And I notice now that Troy Hunt here on Haveibeenpwned.com has a link now to 1Password Password Manager, which, as I said, is the only one I use. And now it looks like Troy is recommending it. Hopefully he makes a couple of bucks off of that because, man, has he been doing yeoman's work. So it's showing me Adobe. So 153 million Adobe accounts were breached, with each containing an internal ID, username, email, encrypted password hint in plain text, and more. And it says the password cryptology was poorly done. In other words, it was crap. B2B USA business, 105 million individuals in that breach. BitTorrent, January 2016. Was hacked. BitTorrent is a protocol that I use for downloading copies of large files, particularly Unix executables, ISO images and things, and share them with people. Clear Voice surveys. This was in April 2021, and they had a publicly facing database backup that was taken and redistributed on a popular hacking forum. Isn't that something? 15 million unique email addresses, 17 million rows of data, included names, physical and IP addresses, sex, dates of birth, plain text passwords. Oh my gosh. Data enrichment exposure. This was in October 2019. 1.2 billion records. Dropbox, mid-2012, and in August 2016. they had stolen in 2012, looks like email addresses and passwords, verifications.io, February 2019, right? This just goes on and on. Zynga. So let me see, that verifications was 763 million unique email addresses, dates of birth, employers, sex, geographic locations, job titles, names, phone numbers, physical addresses. And Zynga. So what I've been seeing, and by the way, in the paste, this is the undergroundrevolution.eu paste is what it was called, and it had 34,000 emails in it. So what does all of this mean? Well, all of this means that I am going to see email that's very convincing. I'm already seeing it. I'm seeing emails, these spam phishing emails, that are actually spear phishing in my email boxes that have in them my address, my name, sometimes my phone number, and they're trying to convince me of something, right? It's like, okay, your account has been compromised. That's just such a common thing for them to say, because it has been. Here's, we need you to do an update. It's account associated with, and then they give the physical street address or the P.O. box, whatever it might be, so they can steal your information. So that is haveibeenpwned.com. Check it out. Make sure you get my newsletter. It's free. The information's free. craigpeterson.com/subscribe. And we're going to get into 2FA right now. We're going to talk about authenticators right now. Two-factor, multi-factor. What is this? You're hearing it all of the time. Some of us are being required to use it for our businesses, and you're going to see it more and more for good reason. So probably the first industries to really start using the authenticator idea was banking. That's probably number one. And it was to help secure online banking, financial transactions. And then in more recent years, we've seen other industries jumping in, including healthcare, government, technology companies like mine, all using them. Well, why do we use authenticators? You might have seen them. Some of them are these little key fobs, right, that have a 6-digit number that keeps rotating. Some of them are apps. That's what I tend to use on our phones. The list goes on and on of some of the things that they can do, should do, etc. But the reason you want to use an authenticator like that is because the most secure way of handling your authentication is something you know along with something you have. So the something you know would be your username or your email address and your password, right? That's something you know. But we now know that the bad guys know our usernames and passwords, right? Well, and that's part of the reason I keep saying use a different username or email address, and definitely use a different password for every website out there, right? Without a single exception. You have to do that. And the reason you have to do that is because they've got your current password. They've got your current email address. So what happens with an authenticator is, okay, you know your username and your password. The bad guy knows your username and password. But with an authenticator, they have to have that 6-digit code that changes every 30 seconds. They don't have it, right? At least you hope they don't have it. And they don't have it because if you're using an authenticator, like one of those little key fobs, or you're using an application on your phone, some of these applications are free, such as Google Authenticator. And Google Authenticator is a great little authenticator. Google Authenticator works on all kinds of websites right now. Google, of course, uses it. Dropbox, Facebook, Microsoft, most banks, they all use it. So it's free. Why aren't you using it? So what you have to do is you download it onto your smart device. It can be Android, It can be iPhone, and you download Google Authenticator absolutely free. And then what you do is you go to a website that supports Google Authenticator or compatible, right? There's lots of compatible password managers, such as 1Password, which is the one I recommend, and many others that I won't mention because I don't recommend them, okay? But they're all compatible with Google Authenticator. So you go to the website. Usually you'll go into your account settings. And in your account settings where you would change your password, you set up, it's usually called 2FA, for two-factor authentication. What's the first factor? Your username and password. What's your second factor? It is the authenticator. So you set up the authenticator. It might show you a QR code that you scan with your phone. Very easy to do. I also, if you're using 1Password on your laptop or desktop computer, it shows that that website will show you that QR code, and 1Password will automatically find it on the page and set you all up. It is so easy to do nowadays. So you now have in your Google Authenticator or 1Password, you now have an account for that specific website, no matter what it is, the bank, Microsoft, Google, whatever, okay? And so now, next time you want to go log in, what's it going to do? Well, by the way, it's before you even get to the point of logging in again. Once you set it up, it's going to say, okay, so tell me what the current 6-digit code is, just to make sure everything worked right. If you don't give it the right 6-digit code, then, well, that failed, and you have to try it again, right? Try to set it up again. It's not going to penalize you because you didn't have the right code, right? You don't lose access to your account. So there's not a lot to worry about here. So next time you go to log in, you are going to be able to pull up Google Authenticator and log in to that account. Now, Google Authenticator, as long as your phone's getting backed up, you're not going to lose those authentications. But there's another trick I want you guys to be aware of. And that is when you set up an authenticator, it will often give you the option of having a bunch of codes, one-time use codes generated. So it'll generate 8 or a dozen, maybe more, of these one-time codes. And the idea behind this is keep those codes, don't lose those codes. And if for some reason you lose your authenticator, the phone gets destroyed, your backup didn't work, you can still log in by using one of those one-time passwords. Now, there's a big difference between using an authenticator application that has that 6-digit code that keeps rotating every 30 seconds with a new code. Big difference between that and getting a text message. Text messages can be and are intercepted. And at the very beginning, I was talking about what? I was talking about getting a text message saying, your account has been breached. We need to confirm that this is you so that we can clean up the mess. And please respond with the 6-digit code that we send you. And then the bad guy goes and logs into Microsoft, Google, Dropbox, Box, Facebook, your bank, whatever it is. And what is that company going to do? It's going to send you a 6-digit code because now you're safe, right? And so that 6-digit code comes to your phone. And remember, you just got this other text message that said, we're trying to verify you. You need to send us this code to make sure it's you. And so people now send that 6-digit code off, and the bad guys now have your one-time password, your two-factor authentication, that 6-digit number that was texted to you, right? So be very, very careful. It could be done with something like Google Authenticator or 1Password too. They could say, "Oh, we need to know your 6-digit code." But it's a little more obvious that they're trying to get your two-factor 6-digit code from you when it's an authenticator app versus It's just a text message. Then the other thing that's happened before with the text message thing is, a couple of different things. One, and this is very, very targeted, right? They got to be coming after you. They know you own a business that has a lot of cash in a bank account that they can steal, or very frequently, you've got a lot of Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrency that they want to get their hands on. So what they'll do is they will either transfer your phone number to their phone, or they will try and clone your SIM. And they do that by calling up your cell phone carrier and pretending they are you. So I want to ask you a question. I want you to think about this seriously. How much information about you is up on the internet? What do you post on Facebook? What do you post on LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever it is you use online? Can the bad guys go there and figure out enough about you to fool the phone company into transferring your phone number to them? Man, this happens. I know this one guy had a lot of, it was actually Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and he noticed that his phone just hadn't getting his normal volume of messages or phone calls. So he started looking into it, and that's exactly what had happened to him. So call your phone carrier right now and say, hey, Verizon, T-Mobile, Sprint, whoever it is you're using, I want to make sure we set up a password so that only I can call and make changes to my account. That makes sense to you? Makes a lot of sense to me. So do that as soon as the show is over, okay? Because I got some more information for you here. So that's one of the things they do, and they cannot do that. It doesn't matter. Steal my phone number all day long. You're not going to have my unique 6-digit number that changes every 30 seconds. That little key is not going to be in your hands. Now, you should do this, and I have myself done this, on every website that supports it. I did it with my buddy, and it was really kind of fun with him going through because he had a lot of resistance to doing it. And this is even after he had 2 paychecks stolen by the bad guys because of how he did things, right? With his passwords and his accounts and everything else, right? Sometimes. But anyways, it's not that hard to do. Now, my business, as you probably know by now, is cybersecurity. It's been my focus in the online world really since I got hacked on the internet back in 91, I guess it was, 92. Back then, it wasn't terribly malicious. It was called the Morris worm, and it really hurt my business there for a few days while I tried to figure out what was going on. But I've been doing this for over 30 years, and I have a free newsletter, absolutely free. It is not chock full of advertisements. It's chock full of great information, including my weekly featured tip. And it's something that you should get and you should have. But because my business is cybersecurity, I don't just use 2-factor authentication. I use multi-factor authentication. So for things that we log in at, when we have customer information, it's a username, it's a password, and with us, it's also the 1Password token, kind of like what we've just been talking about here, with using a Google Authenticator compatible device. But I also require biometrics. So it also has to do with face scan in order for us to get at any of our customers' information. So read this article. If you didn't get it, if you're not on my list yet, just email me at craigpeterson.com. Let me know what you want. Be glad to send it off, or Mary will send it. Take care. craigpeterson.com online. We had some questions about my featured tip that's in the newsletter. This one was called Staying Ahead of the Curve, Uncovering the Most Dangerous Cyber Threats to Small Business. And I give some step-by-step instructions. So we're going to go through this because it applies to businesses as well as home users. There are so many threats out there. And so what we've been doing, when I say we, I mean my wife and I, is putting together these featured tips in our free newsletter that goes out every week. And it is rather extensive. We're trying to do a very good job on this. She's already got 50 of them written. So there's at least a year's worth of these coming out in the newsletters. And they're designed to try and keep it simple, giving you step-by-step instructions and making it so that it's only going to take you 5 or 10 minutes to lock something down. So rather than going to one of my bigger courses or whatever, if you want to try and keep your small business computers or your home machines safe, all you have to do is read this every week and just, make a little change here and there. We're trying to make it very simple. But we also have to remember that when it comes to cybersecurity, it's not a one and done situation. Cybersecurity is something you have to stay on top of. So I don't want you to think either that this means, ta-da, you're all set, right? You've got to keep up with stuff. And that's the reason you read the newsletter, I think, in most cases. This week, I got a note from one of the listeners, and I'm just trying to find what his name is. I think it was a guy. Yeah, here we go. And he is talking, his name's Larry, and he's talking about Grammarly. Now, Grammarly is something that I've mentioned on the air before as a completely indispensable tool if you are writing, if you're a business person, if you're a student, if you want to make sure that your spelling's correct, your grammar's correct, punctuation, right? All of that sort of stuff. That's what Grammarly does, and it is absolutely fantastic for doing that. But he reminded me of something that I probably forgot to mention to you guys, right? And that is, there are security concerns. Because remember, when you're using something like Grammarly, it goes and uploads what you're typing into the cloud, right? So in other words, up into some data center somewhere that they are most likely renting space at, right? I doubt most companies nowadays like Grammarly would bother owning the infrastructure because it lets them, the cloud upscale, downscale is perfect for them, perfect for startups. Although the cost can be kind of high. So you want to stay ahead of the curve, uncover really your mistakes in writing. And nowadays, everybody's talking about these AIs out there, ChatGPT being the one most people talk about. I use a couple of others. I'm trying to get this company on, and it's hard to reach people nowadays. There's so much spam, and they just don't know, should I read this email? Should I read this email? And then on top of it, they are all worried that, oh no, the media, we're going to get ripped to shreds. No, come on. I don't do that. I've done over 8,000 interviews now with C-level people and aired them. And I have never, ever backed anybody into a corner. So I'm not going to do that. But I want to get these guys on because they have a tool that is absolutely amazing. And it's designed for writing stuff. And I've been using it for some of the blog posts we put up. And people have been commenting on how much they like them. And these blog posts are, again, this type of thing that we're going to talk about now, which is staying ahead of the curve and what are the biggest cyber threats to people out there. And it is great because what it does is it helps you to structure it. So it comes up with the structure. You can change the general structure, the titles, right? The subtitles, all of that stuff. It just generates them, which is wonderful. So I go in, I'd say most of the time I get rid of maybe a third of those little titles. It comes up with suggestions, and I add in probably a half a dozen more, and then we work together and flesh it out and everything. It's just a fantastic tool. And it is an AI, but again, remember, AIs cannot be trusted. but they are great when you're writing and you got that good old writer's block. And that's exactly what this particular AI is aiming at, is people that have to do writing, not necessarily for a living, but have to write stuff. So if you're an HR department, et cetera, et cetera. But remember, it gets uploaded to the cloud. So if you're writing a document in Grammarly, and let's say there's some confidential information in there, there's some PII, personal identifiable information, you don't want to use one of these tools that pushes it up to the cloud. And one of the main reasons is it's against the law in most cases. But the other reason is, well, what happens when they get hacked? That cloud server gets hacked, that company gets hacked, and your information is now part of a paste bin. Right? It's out there. Bad guys have it and could be used against you. So you got to keep that in mind. And again, I want to thank Larry for pointing that out. It's a very good point. And I did try Grammarly on my phone, and Grammarly has a keyboard. So as you're typing, it's sending what you're typing up to the cloud, and it is helping you to fix grammatical problems with it. And I expect here shortly it'll even help you write whatever you're typing. So that means text messages. That means whatever document you might be working on, whatever website you might be on, and it's going up to the cloud instantly. Now, one of the nice things about the Grammarly keyboard and using it on iOS, if you are down in the typing area, you can select your keyboard. So in mine, I've got two keyboards. I've got an English keyboard and a French-Canadian keyboard that I use. And obviously, those are designed for different languages and what you might want to type in. It's kind of handy, by the way, if you're multilingual, because it will even let you type in another language than your keyboard is set to. So you can be typing in English and throw in a French phrase, and it will go ahead and do it all the French stuff for you. But be very concerned about stuff like this, right? Pay attention. It's so easy to use, and it is so helpful. We kind of many times overlook some of the security threats that are involved. If you're using Google Docs, I put together my Insider Show Notes newsletter, the one that has that featured tip every week. I put it together along with my team in Google Docs. Now, I'm not worried if somebody steals it, because we're going to post this on the website. It's going to go out in the email, Insider Show Notes, or, it's going to go out there somewhere. So I'm just not worried about it. But, be careful, because if you're used to using it for stuff that doesn't really matter, it's not regulated, it's not personally identifiable, doesn't have your bank account in it, it just gets so easy to kind of forget about that. And then you're in real trouble, because you're now using it for things that you should never have used it for. And if you were thinking about it, would never use it for. So a little word of advice, and thanks, Larry, for the reminder again about that particular problem. So let's get into this here. We're going to cover right now, we only got a couple of minutes left in this segment, but here's a high level, okay? There's a lot of different cyber threats out there. They are changing every week. Every patch Tuesday, Microsoft releases new patches, including what are called 0 days. And a 0 day means, hey, you have no defense against this particular type of attack unless you install this patch. That's what 0 day means in the Microsoft Patch Tuesday world, okay? There are many of them out there. And that's part of what we're going to be doing here, is helping you guys know about which particular patches matter to you, which ones are being actively exploited, which ones are expected to be exploited within the next 30 days. Isn't that exciting? So I'm going to be doing that sometime soon. Man, I've been working on that code for about 6 months, and I'm almost there, almost done. So that's going to be a good thing for everybody. So let me just give you the top 6 points, and then we're going to dive into them a little bit because we had questions, as I mentioned, about some of the details. So ransomware attack, that's kind of a big deal. If you're a business, if you're an individual, it is as well. But hopefully you're doing backups. But we'll talk about this, okay? Because there's types of backups you should be doing and other types that just aren't going to work. Phishing scams that are out there, what are called advanced persistent threats, those are a very, very big deal. Insider threats, man, those have been around forever, haven't they? Let's see, distributed denial of service attacks and the information of things botnets. Now, this is really kind of interesting, too, because, man, botnets have also been around for a while now in the computer internet world. But did you know your light bulb could be used to bring down the Kremlin or the Pentagon or an airplane? Yeah, so that light bulb can, and we're going to talk about that. We'll get into this in some more detail. If you want to follow along, it was in this free newsletter this week. My insider show notes, hopefully you got that. And if you don't, sign up at craigpeterson.com/subscribe, and you'll get one of these from me every week, and it will help you to know what to do, when to do it. We've also got a really interesting article I wrote about the new hunter-killer satellites that are preparing for space war. And we're talking about some private industry that's doing this as well. It isn't just government. Topic 1 here for what to be careful of is ransomware attacks. So we're going to tell you what you can do to help prevent them, to help cure them. And there's a little bit of good news here, not just on the horizon, but that's happened recently. We're following along the article that I had in my newsletter. Of course, we've done a few things differently lately, but the biggest one that a lot of people have commented on is Craig's featured tip. And this week, we're talking about the most dangerous cyber threats to small businesses and what you can do about them. Now, I have been very busy in updating the article on the website. So there's just a very brief summary in the newsletter. That way, if you're reading the newsletter and you don't care about this sort of thing, you can just kind of skim over it and move on to the next article. There's usually 6 to 8 different articles that I have in there. And some of them are mine, some of them are from third-party sites, etc. But it's all there in the newsletter. And then the link in the newsletter is going to take you to this rather detailed article that Karen and I wrote that really talks about all of this stuff and what you should be doing. I just noticed a typo. Let me fix that. So, number 1 here, the cyber threats. They're a growing concern, not just for business, but for individuals as well. And the very first one on this list is ransomware attacks. Now, again, follow that link. It's up on my website, and you'll get all of this description. But ransomware is still out there. Now, I mentioned good news, and some of the good news is that we have found the decryption keys for some of these pieces of ransomware. So I talk about it here in the article that if you are in fact hacked with ransomware, one of the things you should do is try and figure out what version of ransomware it is, right? Because if you know, you can check and see, hey, wait a minute. Now, wait. Oh, yeah, that is so cool. There is something that we can do about this, right? So that's the first thing. I've got a whole checklist here. In fact, I'm looking at it right now. What to do if you've been hit with ransomware. There's 7 different steps. But the reasons you should be concerned about it are financial loss, because, of course, you might be strong-armed into paying a ransom if you don't have really good backups, if you don't have a good way to restore. You are also going to lose your data. Now, you have to weigh this out, but the general advice from the FBI and cybersecurity experts is don't pay the ransom. So let's consider this here. You've got all kinds of data, and that data is no longer accessible to you. It might be stuff that's just absolutely key, primary, important for you to use and to have available right there for you, right, to run your business. So what happens if it's not available anymore? If your database program doesn't work, if your documents aren't there, if you're a lawyer, right? We've had some calls and helped out some of those law firms. It just, we're all set. And then eventually they call us back because they've been nailed. You've got to be really careful because you lose all of those things. What are you going to do with the court filings? What are you going to do about your tax forms? What are you going to do about patient records? What are you going to do about manufacturing? You don't even have your purchase orders anymore. You don't have anything that you would need to run your business. So you're sitting there saying, wait a minute now, they want, and whatever the amount of money is, maybe it's low, maybe it's only $25,000. Very frequently, it's a lot more than $25,000. Well, let's just say it's $25,000. Well, how much money are you going to lose if your business doesn't have access to your data? And so I can see you there with both hands, right? Well, on the one hand, on the other hand, and what should I do? Well, the FBI says don't pay. And part of the reason not to pay is now the bad guys know that you pay ransoms. And we're going to be talking about something called an advanced persistent threat here in a few minutes. But they know you pay. They've already got a foothold on your computer systems. You pay. Maybe you get your data back. FBI says it's about 50% of the time you'll actually get all your data back. Maybe you won't get your data back. We've talked about these guys before. It's incredible. You've got ransomware as a service people out there. They got tech support people. They kind of got everything. But your data loss is probably what's going to hurt your business the most. So what are you going to do? Right? Well, there's things you should have done before, but, and that includes backup. We'll be talking about that here a little bit later. Business disruption. What's going to happen in your business operations, right? You can't get your programs, you can't get your data. Privacy breach. Some ransomware attacks involve data theft. And now it's approaching, I think, about 50%. Half of them have your data. The first thing they do, they put some software on your computer, and then over the next few weeks, they poke around. They look at your network drives, right? Your J drive and your E drive and whatever you might have called those network drives. So they poke around, they scan around, trying to find, okay, what have we got out there? Okay, here's some Excel files, here's some Word docs, here's some other things. And then they evaluate all of that and say, oh, okay, well, interesting. And then they download them if they look particularly interesting. So they now have all of your data files. And then comes the double ransom. So they're saying, hey, listen, pay up, guy, or we're not going to decrypt your data or give you the key, whatever it is they're going to do for you. And then after you've done that, they say, oh, by the way, we have all this sensitive data of yours. And unless you pay us X more dollars, we're going to release it to the whole wide world. Interesting, isn't it? So now you're looking at a potential privacy breach. Do you have information on your computers, could be in a spreadsheet, could be in a Word doc, could be in a database, that is personally identifiable information, particularly on individuals? Names, addresses, phone numbers. That's all you need right there. And maybe you have more, maybe you have a social security number, etc. Be darn careful with that data, because in most states now, you have to report it. Many states have a fine. They'll look into it. Okay, so what are you doing? How are you doing it? What should you have done? And if you didn't do what they thought you should have done, bammo, you are nailed. You're in big trouble. So be careful of that. And of course, reputation damage. Look at what happened with SolarWinds. I was just talking about them yesterday. SolarWinds is a company that makes tools used by managed services providers. And they provide all kinds of just totally wonderful tools. Right? Yeah. Nothing to worry about here. So SolarWinds was out there, and they had monitoring tools that they were selling. They still do, if you can believe it. They're still in business. And their tools were used as a launching platform by the bad guys to get into hundreds of thousands of businesses out there. Yeah, they're still in business. It just shocks me. So, reputation damage? You betcha. Right? We don't use SolarWinds. We, in fact, approached them before they were hacked, telling them about the potential problems. In fact, maybe I should talk to an attorney about that. Maybe there's something there. But we warned them about it, and so we canceled their contract. Unfortunately, most places don't know enough about cybersecurity to realize what a hole they had even before they were breached. So what do you do if you've been hit with ransomware? I've got the list, 7 things. If you want me to send it to you, just email me, me@craigpeterson.com. You can click through the link in this week's newsletter as well. Hopefully you got it. It's called Stay Ahead of the Curve, Uncovering the Most Dangerous Cyber Threats to Small Business. And remember, too, it isn't just small business. These threats are presented to you as home users as well. So when we come back, we got more to talk about. Phishing scams, what you should know, advanced persistent threats, and a whole lot more. Online, craigpeterson.com/subscribe and get that free newsletter. We're running through some of the top threats right now when it comes to your data. Particularly interesting here is the threat to small business, but every one of these applies to home users. You could lose everything. You know, by now you know me. I'm not going to leave you high and dry, right? This isn't just trying to get people to freak out and then take some action that I'm not even going to tell them about. I have all of this. We're talking about all of this, all of the things you should do. And more specifically, I have it in my newsletter and on my website. And I'll be glad to send you this article. It goes into a lot of detail here. You should print it up and stick it in your drawer so that you have it if you need it, right? This is one of those playbook type things that could be very, very important for you. All of these threats, what you should do, how can you detect it, and what you do after the fact if you've been hacked. Phishing scams, man, these things are constant. And phishing scams can be really hard to spot. I was just talking about them on the radio and this week, and the host that I was talking to was saying he got a very interesting little text message from his bank saying, hey, listen. Oh, no, it wasn't the bank. It was his cell phone provider. Hey, listen, you are a good customer, so click here and we'll give you 10% off. So he was looking at it and decided, okay, well, I'm going to do some investigation here. I'm smart. I have Craig Peterson on as my guest. And he started doing some searching online. And he found online that, there's, there's my provider, cell phone provider. Yeah, they do have customer loyalty discounts. Yeah, and it's 10%. But he's still sitting there saying, what should I do? Is this a real phishing scam? You know, the goal of these scams is to get you to give up sensitive information. Things like your usernames, your passwords, credit card details. So he might do all of that research and say, okay, this is legit, but if I want to get this 10%, I got to click on this link that was text to me. You can click on that link. It'll take you to a site that looks just like your bank, or in his case, your cell phone provider, right? Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay, so it wants me to log in, right? My username, my password. Okay, here we go. And then your page refreshes and it asks again for you to enter your username and password. And you're sitting there thinking, oh, okay, well, whatever. I must have messed something up. Here's my username and here's my password. Okay. But it doesn't say anything about 10%, so I'm going to dig around a little bit. Let me tell you what just happened. that first time when he clicked the link and he went to the website, supposedly of his cell phone provider, someone had cloned that homepage / login page from his cell phone provider and put it up on another website. So that's where it comes in handy to use that little lock. You might have noticed that up in the left-hand side of that URL bar. And it's telling you about the connection itself. And it'll tell you what's the certificate, who issued it, who owns this, right? All of that sort of stuff. So on my website, it says it's craigpeterson.com and it's organization's Cloudflare, because I'm using Cloudflare to protect craigpeterson.com. And also, frankly, to speed it up, right? All right, so that might be legitimate. It might not be legitimate. When it comes to banks, when it comes to bigger ones, you don't have to worry about that as much, the fact that it's Cloudflare. So I'm going right now. I'm going to tmobile.com. That's who I've been using now for a little while. It's saying, okay, I click that little lock to the left of tmobile.com. It says connection is secure, and I click on the certificate, and it says certificate's valid, and it says the name is tmobile.com, organization tmobileusa.com. So by using that little thing at the side, you can tell whether or not you are talking to a domain that is truly registered by who you think it is. So I'm going to Verizon right now, verizon.com. It's got that nice little lock, and it says connection is secure. So I click on that. It's telling me there's 82 cookies in use. Man, they like cookies, don't they? So it says the connection is secure, certificate's valid. So I'm going to click on that, and it says, yeah, its organization is Verizon Digital Media Services, Inc. All right, so that's probably their website. Now, what I don't want you to do is to do what I've seen done sometimes as much as a third of the time when people are coming to craigpeterson.com. You can type craigpeterson.com into the URL bar. That's the bar pretty much right at the top of the web browser. Now, if you're obviously using a mobile device, nowadays they're at the bottom if you're using an Apple iOS device, right? But you know where that URL bar is. It tells you who it is that you are talking to, what the page is. It tells you all that wonderful stuff. Good. Okay. Here's the problem. A lot of people, by default, when they open their browser, it's got a search box from Bing or a search box from Google or maybe DuckDuckGo. Could be a lot of different places, right? Got that nice little search box. So people will go ahead and type into that search box, craigpeterson.com. That's not where you're supposed to type it. So if you type in craigpeterson.com there, right at the top, it shows Craig Peterson, reliable cybersecurity for small business, it says, right? Make your cybersecurity compliance frustrations disappear quickly. NIST 800-171, CMMC, DFARS, blah, 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 right? All of this stuff. All right. And it's showing the URL is https://craigpeterson.com. You like it? Okay. So far, so good. The problem is there are ways to poison the search engines, and it's been done many times. And this happened to my father. My dad had a problem with Windows. So what does he do? He goes online and he does a search for Microsoft Tech Support, and he ends up with a scammer. Yeah, pretty bad, eh? Yeah, the security guy, his dad. However, my stepmother was kind of looking over her shoulder and gave me a call on the side and said, here's what's happening with your dad right now. So we hopped on his computer remotely and poked around and took care of some things for him. And it was pretty scary. So here's what can happen. It's one thing to search for Microsoft Tech Support. It's another thing to search for your bankname.com, your cellphoneprovider.com or craigpeterson.com, because those search results might not be what you're looking for. Okay? You got it? they might not be the right place. So if you don't type that URL for your cell phone provider into the URL bar, you could very well be going to a bad guy's website because of the search engine. So keep that in mind, right? That's what the phishing guys are trying to get you to do. So step one, he clicked on that link in his text message. It took him to a website. That website asked him to log in. Looked like it was his cell phone company. And then his page refreshed, and he logged in again. So that first time around, he was actually giving his username and his password to the bad guys on their website that looks exactly like the cell phone site. And the page refreshed. Why? Well, because the bad guys have his username and password, and they sent him to the real site. So he logged in there again. So be very, very careful with these phishing emails because they are nasty. Next up, advanced persistent threats. Join me online, craigpeterson.com. This one is probably the scariest of all of these tips that we're going to cover today, and that's called Advanced Persistent Threat, APTs. Unless you are a pro when it comes to cybersecurity, you might not have heard of these, but this is important. Well, so far we've talked about ransomware, including what to do if you've been hit with ransomware, but what are the attacks? How could it affect you? We talked about phishing scams, and we didn't have time to go through the concerns you should have, but in some ways they're pretty obvious. And I'd be glad to send you a link to this article. Believe me, I'm not going to harass you or anything else. Just email me, me@craigpeterson.com, and ask for it, and I'll send it to you. If you don't say anything in the email, other than send it to me at craigpeterson.com, you may not get a response because I don't know what you want. You're not talking to an automated system. You're talking to Mary or maybe Karen or I. You're not talking to an automated system. It's just going to start blurring you with all kinds of stuff. So make sure you reach out. Just email me at craigpeterson.com. Be glad to get back with you. Also, there are a couple of other things we may not get to today besides advanced persistent threats, but the insider threats, distributed denial of service attacks, IoT botnets, all of that is explained in this article that I'll be more than glad to send to you. Just email me at craigpeterson.com. Now, let's get into this here. The advanced persistent threats. I don't think most people have heard of these, but you'll understand the concept. This is a type of cyber attack where it's a group, really, of skilled and well-funded attackers. Many times they are what we call state actors. In other words, it might be North Koreans, it might be Russians, it might be, one of those guys. But they use some pretty sophisticated techniques in order to get unauthorized access to your computer network or your computers. And the idea is, once they gain access, they're going to keep up a long-term presence on your network without being detected. That's their goal. Right now, sometimes you can detect them. If they're really good, they're going to be really hard to detect. And the attacks themselves can often last for months or even years. That makes them way more dangerous than other forms of malware. And this is actually a very common type of attack. They'll get onto your network, they will poke around, they will find stuff, they will upload it, they might sell it to somebody, maybe even a competitor of yours, and then they might do something even worse. And I have seen cases where somebody got into a network of a business, and this is true for government agencies. I think there was even a DoD, Department of Defense one recently, and they'll steal some stuff, and then, they don't want to really hurt you too bad right off the bat. It's like a fox. I have chickens. I have chickens and I have bees, and we have cats and we have a dog, right? All of that sort of stuff. when it comes to the chickens, I let them free range. So they go out in the pasture and, they eat bugs and weed seeds and stuff, and they just have an all-around good time. They love doing that sort of thing. But we also have foxes in the area. Foxes are interesting hunters. They won't just come and kill every chicken. They will maybe kill 2 or 3, and they will take them back to the den. Usually one at a time. So they'll come back and pick it up. But they won't come back to my chicken yard, if you will, for a while. They actually move around. So they try not to over-harvest an area. So they took some of my chickens, and then they're going to go and steal and eat somebody's cat, and maybe they'll find some wild rabbits. And, of course, they eat mice, field mice, voles, moles, all that sort of thing, right? And they'll just keep moving. So they might not come back to my chickens for a few months. Well, that's very similar to how these advanced persistent threats work. These attacks will often last for months or even years. And the bad guys will get onto your systems. They'll find some stuff that they can either sell or use, and then kind of leave you alone. They'll take it, obviously, and do their thing with it. But they're not about to ransom, encrypt all of your data. Makes sense? So governments and these criminal groups are the ones that are usually using the advanced persistent threats. So here are some reasons you should be very concerned about these. Number one, obviously, is the persistence, right? It's right there in the name. They're designed to remain undetected for a long time, so the bad guys can get at sensitive data. They can get at the person identifiable information, trade secrets, intellectual property, customer data, right? They're targeted, very highly targeted. Unlike phishing attacks, and of course, their payload could be ransomware, which are sent out just to anybody's email address they can find, usually. Phishing can be a little different. I have seen phishing attacks that are pretty well planned, so you got to be careful of some of those things that are out there, okay? But these things are sophisticated. They use social engineering. They'll pretend they are tech support, etc. I was really impressed with one of my clients. This is a new client, and they're so happy to have us. But we went out to one of their facilities to remove all of this old software that this other managed services provider was using, all of the SolarWinds and this other not so great software. We'll just leave it at that. And the employees there had us wait until they could confirm we are who we say we are. That was impressive, okay? Because that is what's called a social engineering attack. It's one of the types where you pretend, or the bad guys pretend they're the IT people. And as the IT people, they want access to the computers. Now they have access to the computers, they go ahead and put their software on. Now, they're not likely to show up at your door unless they're really after you. Governments might show up at your door pretending they are someone who they're not, but expect a phone call, okay? It happens all of the time. They'll also use some of these zero-day exploits that we hear about every month from Microsoft. I love how there's Microsoft Patch Tuesday. They put that in place because there were so many patches every day. They were getting a black eye. So, yeah. Don't worry about it, people. We might leave you exposed for 30 days, maybe 60 or 90 days, but don't worry about it. Microsoft drives me crazy. Obviously, there's a risk of financial loss. Very, very big deal. You could lose your financial information. We had that happen to a client as well, where they're twice now, I think, 2 different clients, where all of the money was stolen out of their operating account. Obviously, reputation can be damaged. You could get regulatory fines. And one thing about an advanced persistent threat that isn't the case with so many other things is it can take a lot of resources in order to recover from it. Resource-intensive recovery is what I've got here in this article. I'll be glad to send you this, by the way. All 7 points on this, as well as everything else. Just email me at craigpeterson.com. I'm glad to get it out to you. So you're going to have to conduct a very thorough investigation, figure out what happened, how they got in, close those holes. Then you have to do some more remediation here. You're going to obviously have to improve your cybersecurity measures, and you're going to have to reinstall all of your computers that might have potentially been touched by these bad guys. And I don't mean, I'm going to restore from backup, because you're probably going to restore the advanced persistent threat software, right, that you're trying to get rid of. I mean, you are installing from scratch. You're erasing the machine. Nowadays, there's even another problem, which is the machine itself may have had its boot files modified. Think of it as the BIOS from the old days. So every time your computer boots up, even if you reinstalled Windows, it's going to reinstall their malware. Insider threats, I'm going to go pretty fast here now because we're almost out of time for this segment. But insider threats are the most common type of cyber attack, believe it or not. So what is an insider? It's anybody working for you, could be a contractor, anybody that has access to your systems and data. So remember that. And their motivation could be money, could be revenge, could be ideology, right? They just hate the fact that you like something or vice versa. And it also could just be a desire to steal data, disrupt operations. And think about all of the times that it's hit the news, particularly in the automotive sector, where people have left one company, Google, Apple, Uber, those types of companies, and they brought with them a treasure trove, not just of knowledge, but of data from the company. So they're stealing plans, they're stealing all of this stuff. Very, very bad. So keep in mind, disgruntled employees could steal property. They can steal proprietary information. They could sell it on the black market. They could sell it to their new boss. The Chinese pay dearly for some of this information. Could be employees that are exposing some of your sensitive data, information, intellectual property because of poor password management. They might use the same password everywhere online and the same email address or username. Could be an employee who's deliberately tampering with your systems to damage them. And we've seen that again and again. That's why you've got to make sure you are using a system that will, in fact, allow you to completely disconnect them. Think of what happened here recently with some of these layoffs and firings in these big tech companies like Twitter and all. What happened? They were fired, and the way they found out is their email didn't work anymore. You have to be one single switch that cuts off all access. So there's more. It's right there in this article. Distributed denial of service, IoT botnets, different types of cyber attacks, point after point after point. And it's all available for you. Just email me, me@craigpeterson.com, or maybe you got it in my insider show notes already. Check there. But man, this stuff's important.